What's up players, it's Saiyan here coming at you from the man cave, and today I have another Dragon Ball CCG deck profile for you guys. That is right, my favorite card game, and you guys know it, the foundation of this channel, and well, I got another one, who knew? So, seen a little bit of traction with my favorite game past couple of weeks. Just Facebook community is growing a little bit. I see people looking for cards, which is great. So I got the cards out and started to play around some stuff that I had laying around. And in this deck, I only used cards that were basically fairly easily available, except one card. One super rare is in the deck. I couldn't resist. Basically, this is a mono villain. Somewhat red ribbony, somewhat androidy, somewhat tension honey deck. It's just a simple deck, a nice little deck that's just fun to play with. Attacks the opponent from a lot of different avenues. Doesn't really go into one specific theme, just kind of does a little bit of everything. So let's jump into it. Alright, probably should have used the Goku playmat, to be quite honest. Actually, it would be more thematical. This is not an official CCG playmat, as you can imagine. But anyway, starting with the 0 drops, we have 3 Supreme Commander Red. And the reason why we run this guy is because there aren't too many great 0 drops in villain color. Although Dracula Man is not bad, especially the turn he comes down, he's got actually 4 attacking power, so that's pretty good. But we do run the 3 obligatory Ninja Murasaki. Obviously he's red ribbon, so he gets the buff from the Supreme Commander. And these are our 0 drops. These guys here, they are the one that start out the game. Now again, a 0 is probably not the 6 is probably not the best number to be with 0s, but if you're a bit more experienced player, I think you can get around certain problems, particularly if you have enough 1 drops. And I do run 2 Dr. Gero, primarily for the search effect for the android, and also the fact that he's got a fairly good support value for a 1 drop, and he can you can sacrifice him. I mentioned this time and time on. There is actually an errata for this card. This strategy is valid, so you can move him to your discard area even if he is damaged, and you can heal an android warrior. So play it like that. Ability down there had valid. And our other 2 drops, we have 2 Chaozu. I just wanted to get some cards into this deck that isn't in any of my decks, and Chaozu is a really cool card with the other villain Tenshin Han. Good support value there, and obviously buffs Tenshin with +1/+0 if he's a support character just behind Tien. So that's pretty cool. So these are 1 drops. Ideally, you could either have 3 Geros or 3 Chaozus, either or, but realistically, I wanted to include both of them. You kind of have to go with whatever you get in your hand. Again, this is not like a super competitive deck or anything, but it's like a cool little, just a, deck to tinker with. Okay, and then we got 3 Mummy Man, which brings us to the fierce mechanic that we run in this particular deck. So Mummy Man, I referred to him in a lot of previous videos, mail day updates, when we cracked the fusion boosters. This guy is deceivably good. A 3/0, 3/0, whether injured or in healed state, and he's got that fierce 1. Basically means if his team wins a victory, an outstanding victory, your opponent must mill 1 card from the top of their deck. And the fact about fierce is that it stacks as well. Unlike Thresh doesn't stack, fierce stacks. So if you got additional guys who also have fierce, then you add those up. So to follow on the fierce theme, and that's why we got Chaozu, we got this Tien, which is another really, really good card. It's basically an improved Mummy Man, or Mummy Man is a lesser Tian. Tian's got 4-1-4-1, so he also keeps his stats just as Mummy Man, and he also has Fierce 1. So these cards work really nicely together, and then you got Chaozu to make Tian more powerful. So that's really cool. That's the idea. And then moving on to 4 drops, we run 3 Cell Junior. Guess what? This guy also has Fierce 1, got fairly decent stats, searchable with Dr. Gero, and you can have as many Cell Juniors in play as you want. In fact, you can have all 3 in the game. It doesn't matter, because this card says that you may put this warrior into play even if you already control a warrior with the name of this card. So they all have Fierce 1. You can get 2-3 Cell Juniors out. You ideally want to run these as supporting characters for their 4-3. Put them behind Tian, or put them behind Mummy Man, and just deal 2-3 fierce damage to your opponent when you win the battle. Fierce works whether you are opposed or unopposed. You just have to win the battle, which is great. So the idea is that you go into this sort of fierce mechanic. The original idea was that I'm going to try and make the whole deck fierce, but then as ideas came up, I just went into slightly different directions. I kind of wanted to include Android 20 in the deck as well, to have a little bit of impact on the opponent's chi, and we needed a little bit more supporting characters. Ultimately, Cell Junior can be a lead character as well. Android 20, you pretty much always want to use a support character with his 4-3, and you want to make sure that you send him out to defend. When this Warriors team is sent out to defend, discard target chi your opponent controls, so you don't even have to win, you just have to send him out to defend. That's all you need to do. As long as he has a Dragon Ball, your opponent must discard a chi, which already, the reason why we don't run 19 here as well, not only the support, because Android 19 doesn't have any support if he's injured, but the fact that our opponent obviously will want to play some techniques during his turn, and Android 20 might just take that crucial chi away that they need for one expensive technique to play. So they have to play around Android 20 once he comes down. And again, he's a card that's been very much underrated, I suppose, in a way. Obviously, set 2 card, so it came out fairly early. I know that back in set 2, obviously, Villain was probably one of the best colors, particularly with androids like him, but I think him specifically has been overlooked. It's just a really nice addition to this deck, in my opinion. We do all the funky stuff that, of course, Villain likes to do. And then we're on to Android 17s. Android 17 is here for the draw power predominantly, and he's a really good attacker. Another one of those androids that doesn't really lose his stats if he gets injured. He goes from a 6-1 to a 6-0. And I really squeezed the deck. We lost a Chaozu to be able to allow me to include 2 Android 17s, but I wanted draw power, even if it's turn 5. Yes, you need to have the Dragon Ball. He also has toughness, so you can survive big damages. You know, he's not gonna get knocked out if Goku would deal 2 damage to him with a Kamehameha or anything like that. So that's good. And we can just really cash in, draw some extra cards of him. Of course, we can search for him as well with Dr. Gero. Again, that's one of the reasons why it's really difficult whether you want to run another Gero or you want to run another Chaozu for Tian. But I thought I'm going to, because the top line of the deck is obviously pretty much all androids. Finishing off with 2 copies of Android 16, which is another brilliant card. Doesn't lose any of his power, whether he's healed or injured. He's got toughness, and he also has Trash 1. So he's the top of our deck, obviously 6 cost. Again, searchable with Gero. We can heal him with Gero. But realistically, we want to use Gero to heal Cell Juniors or Android 20s. Although no, sorry, I apologize. You can't have Gero and Android 20 at the same time down, but you do want to use it to heal your Cell Juniors. They are not very useful when they get injured, so That's why you got Jiro in there. You don't really have to worry about healing these two guys unless you really want to, but obviously you have to take into account if your opponent can deal one more damage to these guys when they're injured, then obviously they're out. Now, to make sure that our Supreme Commander works, we included this time not Colonel Violet, but we have Red Ribbon Army, which is a really good little event card. Don't forget you can only play one event a turn, but you can bring this card down from turn 1 onwards. Time limit 3, so you get plenty of time to get this down and maybe dig for a second copy. Basically, each of your warrior with a villain symbol, all of our guys gains Red Ribbon Army, and that means they get the pump from Supreme Commander Red. Obviously, the Dr. Jiro, the Murasaki, and the Commander Red and Android 20, they already have Red Ribbon Army, but we want to be able to pump our Chaozu, we want to be able to pump Mummy Man, we want to be able to pump Tian, Cell Jr., Android 16, and 17. So Red Ribbon Army does this for us. Really good card, just to give everybody a little bit of extra pump. And then I run 3 Dirty Tricks. Again, you guys know I like this card. It's a simple card. It's splashable into a lot of decks. What I particularly like about this one is that you can play from your discard, and obviously, if you search for an android, you have to discard a card with your row. You can discard your Dirty Trick. You can still play from your discard area. So obviously, yes, it only dishes out -1/-1, but for 1 energy, I think that's alright. You get 2 uses out of it, so that's fairly decent. Yes, you could run Restrain, or you could run some other cards, but how I always think about Dirty Trick is that you get 2 cards for the price of 1, basically. And that's just my mantra with this card, and it's very cheap to play. Okay, this one, absolute staple for any villain deck, 4 Witches Technique. Again, just for 2 chi from cost 2 onwards, target user gets +0/+X, where X is the user's support value. So if you have Supreme Commander Red out and you got Red Ribbon Army out, your Android 20 has a defense value of 4 with a 4 Witches Technique. He becomes an 8 as a supporting warrior. And imagine if you drop this in your opponent's defense step, Android 20 might just do the trick. Or Android 17, if Android 20 is behind him, you can obviously pump up 20 to be 8. Android 17 will be a 7 with Commander Red and Red Ribbon Army, so that's 15. With this guy, you obviously then going to discard your opponent's chi, and if you win that battle, you draw a card. So look at that. That is basically the game plan. That's where we want to get by about turn 4, turn 5. There's no space left, so I'm just going to start to pile it here. We have a little bit of extra draw power in the form of Super Gravity Room. This is one of the cards that is a sleeper. I certainly realize its potential, particularly with cards like Dirty Trick again, that you can discard away, then still play from your discard. It's obviously splashable because it costs you 2 generic chi to play it, and user has to have a Dragon Ball. If you have 1 or less cards in your hand, draw 2 cards. So obviously you have Super Gravity Room and another card in your hand, you play out Super Gravity Room, then you have 1 card, you draw 2 cards. So it basically replaces himself and pluses you with a card. So it's pretty good for what it does, particularly with villains just not really having any draw power besides Android 17. And you have obviously Fading Riches, which just makes you discard a lot of cards. So maybe you can try to run Super Gravity Room with Fading Riches. As you discard the cards from your hand, you can refuel it. That's another way to do so. Anyway, I'm going to have a video up at some point in the future about all the different draw cards that we can use in the game. And then we got 2 Siphon of Energy. I love this card, but I think 2 is the right spot there, just purely because it's a 4 cost onwards, and it costs you 3 chi to play, and your character must have a turn cost of 3 or more, but it basically gives you +X/+0, depending how many of your opponent's chi you can discard. So Siphon and Android 20, we use these two cards to manipulate our opponent's chi. We also have Fierce, so we mill our opponent out. We have a little bit of Thrash here. We can draw a little bit of cards. We can kind of pump everybody. And just to complete the deck profile, and I said one card, it's actually probably two cards that might be a little bit more difficult to find. We run one Dignity of the Conqueror. It's just a really versatile card. It can get us that crucial win to, again, get that card draw with Android 17, or maybe just help us really to sweep our opponent's side of the field. And this is probably the most difficult to get, Hellflash, but it had to be included. It's just such a great card. Obviously, quite a heavy cost, but the fact that we have uh, 11 cards that can use it, we have 11 androids in the deck, and they basically dish out -5/-5 to one of our opponent's warriors. That's just excellent. That really does the trick. Again, it can get us that crucial win, or it can get us an outstanding victory to do a thrash with Android 16. So just a really good card. Again, it's a one-off. You could include more. If you haven't got Health Flash and if you haven't got Dignity, you can always put in another Siphon. You can maybe put in another Gravity Room, or you can include maybe Restrain. You can include that other technique with cell on the picture that basically can get rid of an event as well. In fact, I would recommend running that. We probably have enough pump, if not a little bit too much in this deck, but that's what we're trying to go for, really. Just a nice, easy deck, not too much to read on the cards. They all just do their thing, and I'm looking forward to playtest it. So I hope you enjoy this little deck tech, guys. It's certainly a quite clear, crisp deck. You got a couple of game plans that you can start with, obviously, depending from your starting hand. You certainly want to get that Dr. Gero in, go and search for one of the androids, maybe a Sal Junior, because that will be your turn 4 play, or maybe an Android 20 if you think that your Gero is going to be KO'd anytime soon. So yeah, that's about it. You can move this deck in a lot of directions. You can make it a fully splashed Fierce deck. I would recommend splashing Alien and run Bojack's Brigade. You want to get Zangief in there. You probably want to get Bojack himself in this deck. You could also run Cooler, but I have another deck that already does that. So I just wanted to really include these cards that don't see the light of camera that often. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think. Let me know if you would build this deck. Let me know what other decks you may like to see. I may also go back and revisit some old decks that may have seen some changes around time, like I believe the Namekian deck hasn't really seen any changes, but I certainly have the full lineup of the cards. I did some changes, some minor changes to the Androids deck, and obviously those two are my utmost favorite ones. But yeah, just following on, this is about it, guys. So until next time, peace out, YouTube. Adios.